You are now live.
Thank you, Amy. Good afternoon. My name is Thomas Lodwick. I'm the interim chair of the Transit Committee. I'd like to welcome you to our January 20th, 2021 meeting. First, I'll give a brief overview of our committee. The Transit Committee is a volunteer citizen board designed to offer input and guidance to the Asheville transit system and City Council. We do not set or change routes, control Asheville's transit budget, or have authority over staff, drivers, or the management company. We're a group of citizens like you who are here to ensure community concerns are taken into consideration when setting public transit policy. We welcome public input. That can be done electronically now, or it can be done after our meetings. You can always feel free to reach out to Transit Committee members if you have questions about any issues that come up today. Thank you for your attendance. Your input is valued. Because we're doing this virtually, I think I'm supposed to start with a sort of roll call in case folks are calling in and can't see everyone. So I will ask folks to go around and just introduce themselves if they're on the call.
Kyle Sherrod, Transit Committee member, present.
This is Jeff Jones, present, Transit Committee member.
Brandon Oliver, committee member, present.
Harvey Harrell, committee member, present.
Rochelle Sorensen Cox, committee member, present.
John Hahn, committee member, present. Proves I'm asleep.
And does staff want to introduce themselves and the RATP Dev folks as well?
LaShawn Abraham, Director of Operations, present.
Barry Reiling, General Manager. I am here.
Hi, everyone. This is Eunice Lovey with the city.
And this is Amy Tessner with the city.
Is there anyone else on the call? I don't think so. Okay, well, I think just as a housekeeping item, if you can just try to mute your microphone when you're not speaking. But other than that, I think we can get into the agenda, which I'll pull up now. So the first thing on our agenda after the welcome announcement is to review and approve our November 17, 2020 minutes. I think Jeff prepared those. Does anyone have any comments or edits on the minutes from our last meeting? I'm not hearing anything, but if folks have comments, just make sure you're not on mute. Well, I think if there's no changes to be made, we would normally just have a motion to approve them. I'm happy to do that. I just move to approve the minutes as submitted. Generally, we would need a second and then a vote.
I second.
Thank you, Harvey. Okay, so I'll do a roll call vote of the members present. Thomas Lodwick, myself, aye. Harvey.
Aye.
Jeff Jones.
Aye.
Kyle Sherrod.
Aye.
John Hahn.
Aye.
Rochelle Sorensen Cox.
Aye.
And Brandon Oliver.
Aye.
Okay, so the motion passes unanimously. And I actually should have asked at the beginning, is anyone able to take minutes for this meeting?
I'm volunteering to take minutes at this time unless somebody else wants to.
that would be great. So I think
Thank you,
that
Pat.
that motion was made by me, seconded by Harvey, and passed it unanimously at 3:35. I mean, when I was secretary, I would mainly just sort of go along with the agenda, and the main things are to keep track of the actions of the committee. So the next thing on the agenda would be to review and approve the agenda for this meeting. I had 2 small pieces of feedback. I think Dana is listed as a current member, and she has since resigned. So I just asked that she be removed from the members list. And there's just a duplication on the bullet point about an update on potential fiscal year 2022 service changes. I think that's really duplicative of the new business that the staff will present on in the bullet point below that. So I think I would just ask to drop that, the one under old business.
I'll second the motion.
Does anyone else have any feedback on the agenda? Okay. So yeah, I would just move to approve it as with those changes. It sounds like Kyle seconds. So I'll just take a quick vote. Again, I'm just going to go in the same order. I, Thomas Lodwick, vote in favor. Harvey Harold,
Aye.
Jeff Jones,
Aye.
Kyle,
Aye.
John Hahn,
Aye.
Rochelle Sorensen Cox,
Aye.
and Brandon Oliver.
Aye.
Okay, so that passes unanimously. So the next item is regarding electing a new chair, vice chair, and secretary. My understanding is Tori is planning to join a little after 4. I might just like to wait for her to join just to be able to weigh in on this, since it's important regarding the future of the committee. So if y'all are okay, I would just table that for now and just move to the other items until Tori's able to join. Is that okay with folks? Thank you. So then would be basically looking for a response from staff and or RATP Dev on the recommendation we made, the transit committee made, I should say, at the last meeting, that riders should be able to elect to ride on an overflow bus when the lead bus is not full. I think we all know what that means, but if anyone is listening in, certain routes have 2 buses running at the same time, given the passenger restrictions and the need for overflow capacity. The request has been made by the committee that a person should be able to elect to get on the overflow bus, even if the lead bus is not full, just given COVID-19 and various safety concerns. My understanding is the current practice is you can only get on the overflow bus if the lead bus is full, and we thought that there was good reason to give folks a choice. So sort of just looking for a response to that motion.
Let me throw, this is Barry, Thomas. One of the reasons for that was, well, the main reason for that was because there was an issue with masks, that people weren't wearing masks, which they weren't required to wear a mask at that time. And they are all required to wear a mask now. So we haven't elected to move to that particular option, primarily because it creates that much more radio communication and interaction. Although, quite honestly, and I hear it on the radio because I listen to the radio a lot, that some of our drivers will actually accommodate that. It's not something that I think that we want to throw in there as a given, just because the reason for the overload bus is if we get to 9 passengers on the front bus, then they can move to the second bus. And everybody is now required to wear masks. So I don't think the advantage is there anymore. Anyway, that's where we are. We haven't enacted a conversation or a rule with the drivers that you stop if someone doesn't want to be on your bus because you have 6 passengers on your bus and they want to ride the overload bus. We have not enacted that.
Jeff, I see your hand up.
Yes, couple more things to consider. When a bus is near capacity, there may be 6 or 7 passengers in the back of the first bus. That social distancing is then at 3 feet, just because you're sitting in every other seat. So I guess I would like to add to what Barry said, and I appreciate what he said about masks, but it's also about social distancing. You can get on a secondary bus to get greater social distance. And I believe the individual who requested it on November the 10th also had an underlying medical condition, and so was electing for a safer option as well. In that respect, greater social distancing, greater spread out. Thank you.
This is Kyle. I would just also add that being on a bus with 7 people is a lot. Being on it with 9 is more, and 14 or 15 is just, to me, unrideable. So I think that if you're stuck out somewhere in East Asheville near the VA and you're the only person at the bus stop, I don't think it's unreasonable to say, well, if the young bus is in line to be here in 5 minutes, I'd like to elect to just ride that one, especially on an inbound transit ride.
I'd only add one other thing, and that would be that the attempt to record pass-ups or overloads, there's no accuracy to any of that at that point. If you're riding an overload bus and we're recording it as an overload bus, it's not an overload bus. It's just an extension of the first bus, right? Not sure how y'all want to do that.
I think I'm unmuted still. I'll just add, I think safety would be a higher priority than that small accounting change, the infrequent number of times that it does happen.
I think we'll take her under advisement. We'll have a discussion with the city folks. We'll make a decision on which way we want to go with it.
Did anyone else have any comments or questions about that? And I saw Jeff's hand raised, but you certainly don't have to wait for me to call on folks. I mean, I think it can get a little disorderly on remote meetings like this, but just hope folks know to not wait on me to notice. So moving on then. The next item, I think, is a presentation from staff. It's an update on transit funding. I think maybe specifically it's about the most recent federal funding issue, but I'll just let staff take it over from here.
Yeah, but I think this one, yeah.
Do we know if anyone else is on this call? Any members of the public or anyone else?
We're trying to put it up so we can make the presentation.
Understood.
I have a printed copy. Okay. Thank you. Hey everyone. So this is a quick update in terms of the CARES funding we received or was allocated to us last year. I should say last fiscal year. And so the presentation will provide information on the funds spent to date, the funds remaining. And I also wanted to update TC members on the newest funding that was appropriated and signed into law late last month. So a quick update on what was appropriated to Asheville. The total amount was 8.6. The city was sub-allocated about 3.6, almost 3.7. And then the remaining funds went to other transit system in Asheville. That amount was about approximately 4.9. Approximately 2.4 was sub-allocated to Buncombe County. 1.7 was sub-allocated to Henderson County, and about $717,000 was also allocated to Mountain Projects, which is located in Hayward County. So what have we spent so far as of December of 2020? Much of the money we received have been spent or used for equipment and supplies, such as PPE, cleaning supplies, signage. So far, we've used approximately $22K. As you all know, we have been working on getting safety barrier doors in the buses. That amount is about $145,000. And we also continue to research for better doors for the Proterra buses. We allocated about initially $962,000 for young transportation. And as a quick update, to date, we've spent about a little over $1 million for the contract. We went to City Council to increase the contract amount by $560,000. And we also requested permission to extend the term of the contract from June to April of this year. So far, we've spent about $178K for RATP, for frontline staff, all the different things that they have been doing in association with COVID-19. We, as mentioned, we have not been charging fares. And so if you look at both fixed route as well as paratransit, that amounts to $445,000, $561,000. And in addition to that, we've included state funding lost because of funding not being available, and that amount is about a little over $1.1 million. So overall, we've spent about $3.1 million of the CARES Act funding that we've received. What we expect to spend in the next 2 to 3 months, about $50K for RATP Dev, the remaining of Young Transportation Contract, which is about $396,767. and that is estimated to last through March of this year, towards the end of March or early April. And then we also anticipate spending an additional $15,000 for supplies and equipment. And then the remaining will be used for fair loss. And just wanted to update members that the total amount remaining is $526,000. However, if you deduct the $396,000 remaining for young transportation, that amount is about $129,000. So right now we have approximately about $129,000 remaining on the total amount that was sub-allocated to the city of Asheville. Thank you. So basically, this is the new one that was recently appropriated and signed into law by President Trump, or the former President Trump. And it's called the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplementary Appropriations Act. And the total appropriations was $14 billion. Of that amount, $13.26 billion has been allocated to transit systems in urbanized areas. Asheville did not get any of the new funding due to some rules that FTA enacted to basically make sure that the money is spread evenly among transit systems. So what that entails is that we received, based on the existing formula used by FTA, Asheville UZA received 88% of the CARES Act funding allocated in 2020, as well as the FY20 5307 regular apportionments combined. And then when you take the total of that, that exceeds the threshold of 75%, which was established for urbanized areas that can receive the funding from the new amount, supplementary funding. And as indicated, this is based on established federal threshold. In addition, if the combined funds for CARES Act as well as the regular 5307 exceed the 75% threshold, the overage is distributed to UZAs that do not exceed that threshold in a second distribution, as well as if any of the funding remains after second distribution, an additional formula is created for a third funding distribution. And to the best of my knowledge, I haven't seen anything come through in terms of a possible third distribution. Basically, that's the end of my presentation in terms of an update to CARES Act as well as the new funding appropriations. Any questions?
So can I begin with a question?
Sure.
So I'm curious about the 88% threshold. Did we do anything wrong to get so much money the first time? And what would we have had to have done to have not exceeded that threshold? Did we even know that exceeding this threshold was going to make us lose funds the second round of funds? So this brings up lots of questions for me.
Well, I would say no in terms of the questions you posed, Jeff. So basically, we did not do anything wrong. And as indicated, FTA or the federal government had a formula in place in terms of allocating the funding to UZAs, as well as, remember, there are also other funding programs that are also receiving money from this appropriations. And what do I mean by that? There's a grant program in addition to 5307. It's called 5311, and that funding is basically used for transit systems in rural areas. So they also got a portion of the total apportionment, as well as the funding that we use for paratransit service, which is the 5310 grant program. So basically, FTA was spreading the money around, if I may explain it that way. And in all honesty, we were not aware that a threshold has been put in place in terms of how the funding would be distributed. We basically got all that information after the appropriations of the funding had been signed into law. Is that helpful?
Well, but isn't that just part of follow-up with grant is learning, what next? Because with grants, once you get the money, it's obviously money with strings attached. Then what are the strings? What are the changes?
You are right in this term, but basically the decision has been made based on reviewing the spreadsheet that had been shared with us in terms of all the different UZAs or urbanized areas that receive funding from the second appropriation. We can definitely follow up with FTA, the regional office in Atlanta, to find out if there's anything that we can do in terms of perhaps getting any funding from the second go around, and we'll follow up with the group as to what their decision is or what their comments are.
So I have one more follow-up question. So I'm new to the group and I want to make sure that I understand the dynamics. So funding is sought by the city, or is that by who? Do you always write the grants for these?
Yes, we normally just a quick overview as to how the federal funding comes to us. There are certain grant programs that are formula based. So basically, FTA use a number of factors to determine that formula. Based on that information, they then appropriate funds to all the various transit systems within an urbanized area. Then, in addition to that, we work with FTA. They have, I want to say, an online system that we basically input that information in terms of various activities that we can use to apply for the grant. I don't want to go into too much details, but I just want to give you an overview as to the dynamics in terms of once the funds are appropriated and we know how much is coming to us. One of the things I also want to mention is that for the 5307 funds, that money is shared among the city, Buncombe County, Henderson County, and also Haywood County, based on a formula that the French Broad River MPO oversees. So let's say that if you take the CARES Act that was appropriated, in addition to our regular 5307, based on the comments provided by Jeff, they looked at all the various data set and basically appropriate funding to the different systems in the UZA. The other thing that I want to briefly mention is that one of the things we also do on an annual basis, and not to confuse you, is that we submit reports to FTA on various aspects of transit operations. So some of the information we provide is operational stats, financial information, mileage, hours of service provided. And once FTA look at that information, they also appropriate funding for the next fiscal year. And I wanted to share that a little bit to let you know that there are other factors that are considered as FTA is looking at appropriating funding for various fiscal years. Hopefully that was not too much information.
I think what I would like to say about this is I certainly understand that we exceeded some threshold. I don't know why we weren't at 100%. I don't know why we didn't spend 100% of the money that we were given. I don't know what it would have meant for us to be below 75%. And I'm wondering about other UZAs that were below 75%. Does this just mean they didn't spend the money that they were allocated in the first round? So I don't, Eunice, thank you for these explanations. But it's a level of detail that I don't think I'm going to be able to comprehend on this call. I did share this information with Kim Roney in City Council, and she has forwarded this information to Deborah Campbell. I don't know if there's anything the city can do, if there's anything we can do to get more funding, but if there's a role for Transit Committee to play so that we can get more money for funding. For example, in your slide, you did say that the Young's contract, we think that what we have is going to carry us through March.
Yes.
That's a concern to me. So I'll stop there. I've said more than my share. And
thanks, Jeff. And as we continue to get more information, whether or not if we're getting any appropriations from the latest COVID funding, I will definitely share that information with TC in terms of what's happening and if there's anything that we can do to change that decision. I doubt it, but I mean, the best we can do is try and see what comes through.
Eunice, this is Barry and Jeff. Along the lines of Jeff's questioning, and I don't know all of it is that you deal with either, Eunice, as far as getting funding and the dollars. But is it not true that
Can you repeat that, Barry? It seems like we lost you during the first part.
Okay. Isn't it true that the city went after every dollar they could get of the CARES Act funds?
Oh, yeah. And remember, we did get everything. But remember, out of the 8.6 that was appropriated, we got the lion's share of that amount because of the formula that the MPO has in place.
Right. And that was what I was trying to address for Jeff is,
okay.
I thought we went after everything that we could go after as far as the city goes for the funding. And the percentage that they let out, the 88%, or that's the FTA and the MPO. And those are the final dollars. That's what they could get to get the max they could get. That's how I understood it.
Yeah.
So
that's basically the truth.
They hold the purse string and they let it out at that level.
You know, they go, how high do you want to jump? And you go, I can jump this high.
and we did. I know you guys did. I know you jumped as high as you could jump to get the most we could get. And Jeff points out a very, very important point.
Yeah.
Before we meet again, if we don't meet for 2 more months, before we meet again on this committee meeting, the funding will have run out. And there will be no extra buses running because there is no funding to run them.
Yeah.
Kyle here with one maybe last comment. My understanding of the newest act is that a lot of the funding that was distributed or allocated for government was contingent on or based on what previous governments had. So in other words, the new act set the 75% barrier in this case. And so there is no more money to even ask for. They basically said, if you got the lion's share, as Eunice put it, of the previous money, then you don't get more. So I don't think that we're even able to ask for more.
I want to say that's correct. We got the money, it's divided among the 4 transit systems, and each of the 4 systems, especially the 3 transit systems, have to let the city know how and what they're spending their funds on so that we can apply it. Does that answer your question? I don't think I heard all of it.
I don't really have a question. I was just saying that the way that the government's allowed to dole out money has to be formulaic. And so they can't just hand out unending funds. And they're saying that you got yours last time, this money's for other people.
Yeah, that's true.
So it sounds like now we have the money that we have. So now the focus is on how do we best manage those funds to get the best job done? Like, what's the job that needs to be done? Who does that job? How much does that cost? Who's responsible now to best manage that money?
And I think that's what we've been doing. Basically, based on the amount that was suballocated to the city, we basically went to city council and recommended how best to use that money, in what areas to use the money for. And based on that, we are working with FTA to apply for the funds. It's one thing basically saying you are going to use the money for different projects or different programs. You also have to apply for it and make sure that FTA agrees with what you're using the money for, especially for the CARES Act, before the application is approved.
Sure. I understand how grants work. My question is, whose job is it now to best manage that budget? Like, right, we have the money we have, so there's no more funding right now. Who's holding the ball now?
I think it's a staff in the transit division. We manage all the transit funds that is appropriated to us. So along with any funding from FTA and the state, that's what we do. And we also work with staff in the finance department in terms of how that money is included in the annual budget, in terms of spending and everything.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions?
I know so it looks like Tori's here. Tori, thank you for joining us. We had deferred the election of new officers until you could join. I wonder if y'all would entertain just the next item after the funding was an update on the Young's Bus contract, which we just got into a little bit. Are y'all okay if we just kind of close that out? Eunice, I don't know, is there anything else to share or more details on the Young's contract, like the extension, the funding of it, plans for the funding running out apparently?
I don't think there's anything more to share, to be honest. And much of the information we've shared and are also providing today basically lays out, the plan on how to use that, especially the additional transit service. So there isn't very much to share anymore. Of course, if there are any questions, we can definitely provide additional information in future.
So, but can you clarify, just to make crystal clear, what Barry is saying, that the money for the Young's buses will have been exhausted by March? Is that right?
Yes. Based on our estimation, yeah.
Okay. And so I was confused because the request was for extending it through April, but are you saying there's just not the money there at this point?
Yeah, it could, go. That's why I clarified and said towards the end of March or early April, depending on, the services they continue to provide.
So I have a question about the Young's contract, if I may. So, and my facts may not be quite correct here, so correct me if I'm wrong. In general, I think that there's generally 4 Young buses that are following ART buses. Is that a general? Well, I'll start there. And then I noticed that there is, at least on the WE1, there is an ART bus following an ART bus. So does that mean 5 routes have a bus following it?
Monday through Saturday, five routes have a bus following. And on
Okay.
Sunday, we have 1 ART bus out there all day because the overloads were not needed that much. So we're able to cut a little back on Young's on Sundays. The city is paying us to run an overload bus as well. So that's what it is. There are 5 buses Monday through Saturday on 5 different routes following as overloads. And then on Sunday, we run 1 overload bus. Now, the couple of holidays we just had, we ran a few extra Youngs because we were running the volume. And quite honestly, once we dropped down to 9 people from 14, the overloads have grown, and they've grown exponentially in the last 3 weeks. It is getting, the overload's getting much larger and much larger. So here's kind of where, and I don't mean to jump in over Eunice, but here's where I think about what's going to happen in the next couple of months. Let's get vaccines done. Let's get as many people vaccinated as possible. If we get to the point to where, the city, and we were all kind of hoping maybe there'd be another funding surge. Maybe there still will be. I don't know. So those are all things that are playing out right now that we don't have answers to, and how it's going to end here if and when we run out of money for Youngs. Okay. So that's playing itself out right now. Obviously the state cut over $1 million of income to the city for funding.
Yeah.
Can that be replenished somehow? I kind of doubt it. Their funds are heavily impacted as well, but they took $1 million away this year, over $1 million. So all of those things are in play. When it comes time, there will have to be decisions, as we did when we first started this up back in March. Remember, we cut 3 routes.
Right.
To use the buses and the manpower to run the overloads or extra buses on those routes. So those are the kind of things that come in play now as we move forward. If there's no more additional funding, if there's not a relaxation of the load factor up to full load or whatever. So all those things will be playing out in the next couple, 2-3 months. That's kind of my 2 cents worth on what I'm seeing.
So a follow-up question then. I'm going to assume that it costs less, significantly less, to pay ART to RATP Dev to run an overflow bus than to pay Young. Because when RATP Dev is paid to run the overflow, you probably are paying for an additional driver, but you're probably not paying for an additional bus because we already own the bus. So I guess the question I'm moving, is there more room to get more ART overflow buses instead of Young overflow buses? Again, trying to make sure that we use that money as efficiently as we can so that it will last longer. Does my question make sense?
We don't have the buses, Jeff.
You don't. You found the one, but you don't have the.
Really, it would be a stretch to go much more. You can always lease buses, but then starts adding in the cost factor.
Yeah.
And then it is also drivers. You have to have the operators.
Yes. I understand that.
And they're limited at this point too.
So yeah,
it's all of those things. Everybody. There's a lot of people on unemployment, and they're not working. And we have a specialist group. CDLs are not. People with CDLs are not in available quantities right now. It's been that way for a year. So all those things are banging up against it, Jeff. They're all great questions. And I would love to go out there and run a bunch more. But even though it's less expensive, it still is expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have the funding either way for that. CARES Act helped with a lot.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
So if I could jump in with a question, just curious. It seems like you mentioned vaccines, Barry, as like one strategy for combating the issue of not having the follow-on buses. What are the other possible strategies? And if you don't know them today, when will the city be putting that plan together?
Well, we're kind of monitoring what's going on with both federal, state, and local government. Buncombe County, makes decisions that will affect all of us. The state has made decisions that have affected all of us, and all of those things going forward. So, will there be an additional CARES funding? Who knows? That's not up to us. We'll observe, monitor, and see what happens. But in the end, there's a lot of different scenarios you could go to. We could go to cutting service and putting additional buses on other routes. We could do the things we started out doing in March last year. So all different levels, but it all kind of depends on what really happens. Do our employees get the next level of vaccine lineup? Those are things we don't know yet, and it hasn't been scheduled. And we jump right in there and go for it. But those things are all going to play out. There's a lot of different scenarios going to play out. We could spend a couple hours on that one.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rochelle.
So, Barry, would RAPPDEV and Asheville Transit be open to partnering with organizations that are also downtown, like you say, vaccines, like with the health department, with maybe the services for the homeless community? I know that RAPPDEV and Art Buses right now spend a lot of energy and time, and a lot of ridership is taking a very vulnerable community back and forth to the places that serve them. West Asheville gets hit hard because of it's along a place where homeless folks get fed often, and where they can get gear, and the WE1 routes as well. So when you have sometimes that's one whole bus. What if we partnered with for a van with A-Hope or Homeward Bound, that there was a shuttle that would take folks from the Plasma Center to West Asheville. And so we come up with creative and innovative ways to move the populations that need to be moved. When the shelters close and the buses and the bus station becomes a place where people can just go and sit, then it's hard to, and then those become your full loads. There's a lot of factors going into who's riding the bus right now, and closeness and community and the behaviors, all of it. There's so much. And I think that partnership right now could be a way to creatively come up with some of these gaps, and with funding, it could be new ways to open up new revenue sources. So can we speak to that a little bit?
I think those things are things that the city, the homeless, there's got to be homeless coalition. There's got to be the churches that are helping all these people. The city absolutely ought to be looking at all options to see what types of things they can come up with. It isn't just a transit issue at this point either. At some point, they've got to start charging fares again too. So all of those. Well,
and that would change everything immediately. I know we all know this.
Yeah,
that would change immediately. But then that would also, I think, increase downtown street harassment. Then they're going to really need that buck that they're going to ask me for every time, because street harassment, it all plays into it. So that's what I'm saying. If there's a willingness to work together, I would like us to explore those options and officially start that communication and look at ways to be innovative and partner focused with these in populations that we deal with, focusing on public health and city and county, and ways we all really work together to use transit to keep everybody healthy and moving. It's the vein of our small business community and our working force. It's how people like me get to work. So I think it's important to think of that as the veins and the health of our city. And the more unclogged we are and the more working together we are and the more movement, the better. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Rochelle, this is Eunice. Just wanted to mention that we did look into that at the beginning of COVID and looking at what partnership we could put in place to provide those services you mentioned. We can take a look at that again and explore what is feasible to be able to come back to the group and say, this is what we looked into, this is what might work or might not work.
I think Brandon had a hand up.
Yes, thank you. First, I wanted to say sorry for the distraction of getting disconnected. To Rochelle, like, I like the creative and innovative, the way you use those words, and I love that thought and the idea. I think that when money starts to run out, there's going to be a lot of issues that happen, and that's if the money runs out, and that's just thinking worst case scenario. Are we planning on moving ahead in that route? Or are we being optimistic in saying that funding will come? And I guess my question is, are we still going to take action one way or the other and just not let any momentum die while we wait in limbo, while we're held here waiting for it? Or is there anything that we can do that will go ahead and be solid and foundational either way it goes? I hope that makes sense. Sorry, y'all.
Yeah, it does make sense, Brendan. And all I can say is we continue to look at that in terms of all the different funding sources that we could tap into. Although CARES Act funding may run out, just wanted to mention that we continue to get our regular federal funding that we receive for transit operations and other programs that we implement. The other thing I wanted to mention is that, yes, the state did cut about $1 million from the funding we get. I understand they're looking into that as well. There's no guarantee. So the point is well taken, and we're working as much as possible to make sure that we have funding for the services we provide.
I would just say, to me, this does sound like an emergency, and it sounds like an advocacy opportunity for everyone on the committee to reach out to the new city council about. I mean, whether y'all want to do a motion or a letter, I don't know. But I mean, ultimately, they need to know that this funding is running out. There are hopes that we will all be vaccinated by some miracle in March. So my fear is we'll be staring down the other scenario of just service cuts, leaving even more people behind. I mean, we're already worried about the rider pass ups, but boy, it will be so much worse come March if we have to cut those overflow buses. So that's something we definitely can do as a committee. And that's why we're here, is to advise city council. So that would make sense to me. And we have a former transit committee member on city council now. So it's worth remembering that.
Thank you all.
Thomas, I have just a question. We have a phone caller in. I just wanted to know if that might be Georgia, and if she is, I just wanted to recognize her, but I don't know.
I'm sorry.
The 1-855 number.
That's the YouTube number, Jeff.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you all for that exchange. It's almost 4:30, so Again, I would encourage everyone to reach out to your city council members about that. But I would like to get back to the first agenda item we had, unless anyone else had anything to say on those funding sort of questions right now. No? Okay. So I sent an update to the committee about this issue. I brought it up last time, but I have to wind down my involvement on the committee probably no later than March. So I'm afraid I'm hoping this isn't my last meeting, but there's a chance since we don't know when we're ever going to get to meet again. So I really would like us to make some progress on electing new officers. I am describing myself as interim chair because I was the vice chair before Beth Medlock stepped down. And so right now I'm the only sort of officer we have. We're supposed to have a chair, vice chair, and secretary. The secretary mainly is responsible for keeping the minutes in the meeting. We've had, it doesn't have to be that difficult of a job. The main things are to create a public record of the actions the committee takes, who's present at the committee meetings, and like a summary of what we go over. Kim Roney set like an impossible standard of basically a transcription of the meetings, but it doesn't have to be that level of detail. You can see what other committees do. And so it's not a huge job, but it's a super important one. It's like absolutely essential as a city committee that we keep good records of what we do. So that position is open. The position of vice chair is open. Vice chair, as I interpret it, is basically like the backup. So if your chair can't be present, they're supposed to be the one that runs the meeting. It's not that big of a deal until your chair resigns in the middle of a pandemic, and then you end up chair for a while. But hopefully my scenario is not one that will play out for anybody else. The chair, I think, is probably the most time-intensive role. Certainly a good chair spends a lot of non-meeting time on the job. And certainly there have been much, much more active and involved chairs than I have been. But that one, I mean, really, you're setting the agenda, you're working with staff, you're running the meetings. It's like anything with these committees, I think you're supposed to put in more really outside of the meetings than you do in the meetings. But that's true for any member, but especially true for chair. So my hope is we can move forward on some, if not all of these, because I just don't want to leave y'all in the lurch, sort of not having an answer to this before I step down. I think we've had, in my few years here, we've had a couple times where just a chair abruptly resigns, and it's not that great for the rest of the committee, but especially when there's not other officers in place. So that was my introductory spiel / begging, I guess, that we move on this. Certainly open it up to discussion. I don't know. I'm open to ideas on how to handle it. Typically, if anyone wants to nominate anyone for a role, that would be appropriate. People can express interest. I've never seen like competing interest in positions, so I don't really know how we would manage that, but we can figure it out. But I'll stop there.
So thank you, Thomas, for that important call to action. I willingly throw my hat into the ring for whatever position would be most helpful. From secretary to, I do have the time to serve as a chair or a vice chair. I certainly welcome any, not competition, but anyone else who would, I'd be happy to serve in any role. So if anyone else would like to step up, thinks they can work with me a little more closely, I would welcome that as well.
If you ran for chair, I'd be your Harris.
Let's do this,
all the
Brandon.
time. I don't have all the
I
time
like it.
commitment.
And Kyle,
Like-
can we count on you for continuing secretarial duties? That could be a dream team.
I
I
would.
nominate Kyle for secretary, Brandon, and myself. Like, let's do this.
Get Kyle, because I think he's trying to back out on us.
No, Kyle, come on. We need you. You're essential to this operation.
I was gonna say I would willingly be secretary for the future.
I like it.
Thank you, Sarah. I apologize.
I second all of that.
Thomas, thank you for your time the other day, exploring this option with me. I appreciate that. Yeah, and thank you for your leadership.
I don't know if I would call it that, but I also say, like, one thing to keep in mind, I think it's important to get this sorted, but once it's your committee, y'all can reimagine the rules. I think we've often been frustrated by this sort of arrangement, but never really had time to reimagine what that looks like. I think secretary and vice chair are kind of open-ended duration. Chair is, I think, 1 year. But, as a committee, maybe in more normal times, y'all can brainstorm how you want it to, if you want to do it some other way. So that was just part of it shouldn't be that intimidating, I guess is all I'm trying to say.
Well, since Harvey, since Rachel, Kyle, and Brandon wanted to do that, I'm all for that. Rachel wanted to be the chair, Kyle was the secretary, and Brandon was the vice chair. So we won't put it into a motion.
Yeah, I think that's fine. So Harvey, are you moving for that sort of, I guess, slate of candidates? I don't know what else to call it.
That's like I said, I'm all for that.
Thank you for your support, Harvey.
Mm-hmm.
I will second that motion.
Thank you, Jeff.
Any discussion?
I just want to thank y'all for stepping up. I really appreciate that. And on behalf of the whole committee, it's just really helpful to have people take ownership. So thank you all so much.
I just want to echo that as well. I think this is really strong to have 3 people engaged and excited about the roles that they're taking on, and I appreciate your stepping up. Awesome.
Well, great. If there's no other discussion, I would just echo that appreciation, and I can do a roll call vote with that.
Okay.
All right. So Thomas Ladwick, I vote in favor. Harvey Harold.
Aye.
Jeff Jones.
Aye.
Kyle Sherrod.
Aye.
John Hahn.
Aye.
Rochelle Sorensen Cox.
Aye.
Brandon Oliver.
Aye.
And Tori Greaves.
Hi.
All right. Passes unanimously. Thanks, everybody. That's great.
Yay, thank you.
And yeah, I'm happy. I've been in all those roles. So if y'all want to reach out to me after the meeting, happy to impart the little wisdom I may have. Okay, well, that's great. Thank y'all so much. So just to get us back on track, I think the next thing on the agenda, I was just kind of looking for an update on the mask distribution, sort of mask dispenser updates. Eunice, I know some of that's covered in your monthly memo, but if you could kind of just update folks. I know some folks are not really riding right now out of COVID concerns. So
Just briefly, we continue to partner with RATP Dev to ensure that we have sufficient masks on hand for distribution on the buses as well as on at the transit station. I want to say we have probably about 14,000 or less based on the last conversation I had with Barry in terms of how many masks we have on hand. And then moving on, and I believe that is going pretty well in terms of requirement of masks on the buses. To date, I haven't heard anything other than people making sure that they have their mask on. Barry, is there any other updates to that based on our last conversation?
No, we went through a pretty good curve of getting everybody on board, and you still have a person here and there that, you know, they don't want to buy in. We don't transport them. It's that simple anymore. So they're required to wear them. We're constantly having to ask people to pull them up over the nose. But that's pretty much it. We have masks. We have installed all the mask holders. We have dispensers on all the buses, on our back doors and on the young buses up front. So there's masks there for people to get. We still have them at the transit center. We hand them out all the time. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions, concerns? Pretty much working to make sure that we have them.
I've got a question here. I guess maybe this is the nature of what I do in the courthouse, but are there any real confrontational problems that the drivers are having? I haven't witnessed any personally. I've witnessed some people being angry or upset, but capitulating and wearing the mask. So I guess the short question is are the bus drivers having any sort of fights or anything like that?
No, that's all pretty well covered. We have that, as you said, there's some angry, but here's what's happening. The other passengers are like, come on, put your mask on, let's go. So they get the help. So it's working. I mean, there's always some stupid stuff happening out there, but just see the security incidents and stuff on the reports that come through. There's things that are happening, but the mask thing, the longer it's around, the more conforming we're getting. So that's what's happening.
Can I say something after Barry?
Sure, Harvey.
This is Harvey. Getting to what Barry's saying, and what's that? Kyle was asking the question. As I've been up here on this bus system for almost 4 years, these drivers that we have, you don't want to confront them. They're very good at their job. I mean, they are very good. I can tell you that right now. You don't want to confront our drivers. Our drivers, they're well versed in their jobs, and their demeanor is good. But once they give you a stern look and their answer, no, there won't be any problems. There's no problems. They're very good at their job. I want to commend them for doing their jobs. And that's it.
Thank you, Harvey.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Harvey.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments about masks on the bus or on the system?
I have one. And I don't multitask well, so I left the meeting accidentally for a couple of minutes. So if you answered this, my apologies. Is there a mask dispenser inside the transit center?
At the window.
So you have to actually ask, go up to the window and ask for a mask?
Yes.
Okay.
And then they're on every bus.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
And my only question, this gets back to the funding, but do y'all feel okay about the mask supply? I mean, or do you have estimates of when it, certainly I hope there's not a risk of it running out, but.
Yes, we've worked real well with the city that if we need an order, they can have an order here in 2 weeks. We haven't ordered any in a couple months because we ended up ordering 20,000. And, I think we're down, Eunice had said around 13,000. I think we're down around 8,000 or so. We need to order some in the next couple of weeks and just keep a big stock on hand. They're readily available now.
Well, thank you for having them available. And I think at this point, it really also is part of just good ridership responsibility that as a rider that you show up with your mask already. I think our ridership has been really reliant on RAPPDEV and transit to give out masks. And I think that, we really, for the sake of the drivers and just advocating for them in a different way, riders should come with a mask already. So thanks what you're doing on that front. And I'm sorry that drivers and bus staff even has to deal with it. So thank you for making it available.
Thank you. The city has done a great job of making them available for us. And we're just trying to be sure they have them. That's, the reality is this first year, everybody's gone through a learning curve on what you can expect from the public, what you need to provide the public, and then going forward, let's kind of see where it goes,
Amen.
I might add one other thing. Before you order more masks, Just Economics may still have a large supply of masks. So you might check with them before you order more masks.
Very good. We'll do that, Jeff. Thank you.
Partnerships.
The next item on the agenda is just an update on rider pass-ups. We spoke about this briefly, but I just wanted to sort of hear from staff and the contractor or really any members about this issue. I continue to think it's an emergency, so happy to hear about this.
I want to say that since we changed the social distancing policy in terms of going from 14 to 9, that number may have increased. And I just want to defer to Barry in terms of what we're seeing. For me, looking at that numbers, that's what it appears.
That is correct. When we went to 14, it really relaxed. That number between 9 and 13 passengers was an important number for overload and pass ups. And so when we went back down to 9, we, definitely those other routes that only have one bus on them. I mean, we only have 4 routes that have 2 buses on them, five routes now that have 2 buses on them. And so those other routes, it's 9 people and there are people sitting there for the next bus. So the numbers are climbing right back up with the 9 restriction since mid to late December and moving into this and then after Christmas and New Year's, the last couple of weeks, I think a lot of people tried to get back to work and they're finding that the bus system is not providing that service right now on a consistent basis. And that's because of the overloads. So it's definitely taken a hit. The pass-ups are going up. We're seeing more of the 2 bus overload. Both buses have 9 people and there are people left standing now. So that's an impact as well. And it's happening a lot more frequently.
Are pass-ups counted and measured, or is this kind of anecdotal evidence?
No, they are. They're counted and there's a report on that. I think the last report we had is right up through December, which you'll see, it's I guarantee you as we update the January numbers, it's gone through the roof. It really has. You can hear the volume increase on a radio chatter. So, and we do record it. So it is being recorded. The numbers do show the ebb and flow of pass-ups.
And while we're on that topic, I just quickly wanted to follow up on something that came up in our last meeting, which was people not being allowed to choose to board the follow-on bus if they didn't feel comfortable getting on the first bus because people weren't wearing masks or it was too crowded. Do you have an update on that?
Yeah, we did hit on that a little bit earlier before you got on.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
But just a quick update. The big thing there was people not wearing a mask on that first bus when it wasn't a requirement. And then, as Jeff said in our conversation earlier, social distancing may want more. The city's we'll have a discussion with the city as to whether we want to begin a method of recording and allowing people to ride the second bus rather than the first bus. And we'll get back to people on that.
And just out of curiosity, why hasn't that happened yet?
Well, the governor passed the law that you have to wear a mask. So once the masks were required, we didn't see the need to separate the bus's passenger loads. Let's fill the first one and then we fill the second one. And right now we're filling the first one and we're filling the second one on many of these routes during peak times and passing people. That's why, is because immediately after that, that's when the governor relaxed the law on the masks leniency, to where we could require a mask or you don't ride. That's why.
Got it. Thank you.
This is Jeff. I'm gonna speak here. Is that all right, Thomas?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So this I was going to save this for customer concerns, and maybe I'll get back to it with regard to something that happened on the 170 route. I'll just mention briefly the 170 route reported on December the 2nd that 4 people were left at I think Spruce Hill Apartments, and I've been thinking about this a lot, and a number of things occurred to me. I hear the lack of availability of additional buses and drivers, but there might be another solution that could be part of the mix. It's clearly not going to solve every problem, but what I want to say is that it used to be the case on the E2 bus. The E2 bus would frequently get behind. And so the city, the transit center, would frequently send out a car to pick people up who needed to go into Hawk Creek. And it was a pretty creative solution. And they did that so that the E2 could catch up time and not have to go through Hawk Creek. So what occurred to me as I was thinking about this problem with the 170, if the city had, and I'm going to say it's like one of the smaller buses, that probably with social distancing could only handle 4 or 5 people. But if you knew that you had left 4 or 5 people at Spruce Hill, and that bus doesn't come again for 2 hours, and the fact that we are now at an all-time high for the number of drivers that we have hired, it would seem to me that there might be an opportunity to at least strategically address some issues when a large number of people is left behind, like at Spruce Hill, and to send a smaller bus with what might be an available driver. At least there used to be more drivers available because they could send at least, it was a driver. It was often Kyle. I think Kyle is one of the supervisors. He would often be driving the car, and that was a solution for addressing strategic problems when they happen, just one-offs, if something. Let me stop talking there. I'm going to say more about the 170 issue when we get to customer complaints, but let me just see if that's one way to address this problem with pass-ups, is not necessarily to have, again, a whole dedicated route, but if you know that someone is left behind and you know they're going to be there for an hour or 2 hours, if you could strategically send a vehicle to help them, because we used to do that. I'll stop.
I was about to say that. We only have 11 minutes to go. I mean, it's 4:49 and the meeting ends at 5.
I think we go to 5:30 now because of these meetings tend to take longer. So I think we're slotted till 5:30. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
So I think the one.
That's good with me.
Harvey, I think that's a discussion we can have with the city. They would have to purchase another vehicle. We don't want to haul 4 passengers in a car with a supervisor. So I think those are discussions they can talk about and see if there's a way to come up with, another type of vehicle to take care of that.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And at the time, I think we were renting those smaller buses.
Correct. We did have those smaller cutaways.
So I just recently spent some time in Little Rock, Arkansas, and they have that exact service as part of their system. It was a minivan, and it was almost like an Uber kind of basis. Like if there was someone who was in between routes and needed a one-off, they had a system to dispatch a smaller vehicle to those connector routes and get people to where they could catch buses again or even to their destination. So if we could, I'd be happy to do a little research and send a link to that Little Rock model so we could see how it works in practice. It was something that was really cool for me to use while I was there visiting. And they were charging. They kept charging, which I thought was interesting too. So distancing but charging.
Hey, Rochelle, we can look into that and report back to TC in terms of feasibility of doing that. But just want to caution that it's also it boils down to funding. I don't want to say everything boils down to funding, but it
does though. I mean, everything does. Money is money.
Yeah.
It's buses. It's wheels and gas and mileage and wear and tear, and it all comes down to money always.
So
there's nothing else it comes down to. So yes, there's always, and I certainly don't mean to detract and take away from the transit master plan. I'm certainly not trying to get ahead of myself. Funding the master plan and just best use of resources right now is certainly my goal. But for future, because that's the way funding and grants and sales work, is you've got to keep new revenue sources going. So as we move forward, I think looking at, again, partnerships and ways to have more buses on the road, more resources for the community is the best, and the more support we can give Barry and his team in terms of the system, and then So
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
I think the next agenda item, unless anyone has anything else on that, is we're looking for an update. I know the city has lost a couple staff members, so if y'all have any updates on that, I know it's hard to get anything done. The city is low on staff.
Yeah. In early December, we lost 2 staff members. Marcella, that I believe almost everyone on the team know her. She has been doing a lot of the transit planning and everything, and she got a new opportunity. And so she is no longer with the city. However, she works on a part-time basis with us till the end of February. So she's still around. And in fact, she's going to be making a presentation to the group a little after 5 o'clock. So far, we have advertised her position, and we used all avenues available to us in terms of trade magazines, trade associations. And so far, we have not received anything back in terms of application or people interested in that position. So we continue to advertise that position. The second position that we lost is the grants coordinator position. And this position is the person who is the lead in terms of managing grants, working with various departments in the city, the financial aspect of grants and everything. And she also left in early December. We are currently looking at that position in terms of duties and responsibilities And basically, hopefully in the next several days or week, we are going to advertise that position and see what comes our way. So that's a quick summary of what we're doing based on the staff we've lost.
Thanks, Eunice.
You're welcome.
And I just want to give a thanks to Eunice, who I think has been wearing many hats during the month of January. So thank you, Eunice.
Thank you, Jeff.
I would just say this since we have so many new committee members, but like a really fully staffed up city team is critical. And it used to pretty much just be one person. I don't know. I mean, I guess there was always the grants person as well, but it's definitely in the interest of transit to encourage and support a full functioning city staff. And in the past, even I think the transit committee has advocated for funding more city staff for that reason. I think in advance of the TMP, because there was no way they could do all that work with the staff they had. So I just say that as something to keep in mind as you go forward. I think the next thing is actually this presentation on potential service changes that I think Marcella is going to do after 5. So maybe we can hold on that for now. I'm assuming she's not joined us yet, right?
I'm sorry.
I'm assuming Marcella hasn't joined yet, right?
No, she hasn't.
Okay. Well, maybe we can just go on to the department updates, the transit update memo. Eunice, if you want to speak to that, and if
Sure. I think the report or the update I provided for December probably is more than what we normally do. So just wanted to find out from members if anyone has questions. What I try to do is incorporate, based on the meeting we had with Thomas on setting the agenda, take a look at all the items that we discussed and provide an update as to what is happening. So there's a very quick update on the division budget, what is happening. I know City Council has a schedule out as to what they plan on doing the next several months, and I can provide a copy of that to members if needed. I also provided an update on COVID-19 in terms of signage, messaging, what we're doing to get the word out. I provided information on mask distribution and the dispensers, and partnership with RATP Dev. I also provided an update to the ART Transit Station Improvement Project. Everything is completed except for the public art and digital signage, and I provided a quick update as to what is happening. Bus stop improvement project, that is really on hold right now due to staffing shortage in the transit planning division. However, if there are any questions or people want to know, want to have more information about that, we can definitely do so. Vehicles, as we have been doing for the last several months, we've provided information on 6 buses that we have on order, the 4 vicinity that was ordered in, I want to say, in 2019. Production was stopped because of COVID-19. However, they continued to work on that. And then in August of 2020, we also ordered 2 more Gillig buses. Production for the Gillig buses, I understand, is going to start in May of this year. Production continues for the vicinity buses. So we will continue to provide updates. In addition to the buses, we're also looking at features or amenities such as the fare boxes, bike racks, and APCs that we have purchased for installation on the buses. As provided, we are getting some new radios that are used on the buses as well as the handheld radios. And basically, we've ordered those radios. They are here. I know Barry and his staff are working with the company to develop a schedule to install the radios on all the buses. So it's a quick update to members. The other project that we are working on is Bus List. And basically, those are used for maintaining and repairing the buses. If there is a tool or equipment or something that needs to be replaced on the buses, this is what is used. We have some in place, but like everything else, they're about to meet their useful lives as established by the FTA. And so we are working on that. And hopefully within the next several days, we should have a purchase order available to purchase that and have it delivered to the garage. The other thing that is new to the report is we're also working with Swiftly. This is a company that we work with on the GPS tracking that we have on the buses. Hey, there's Misala. And so we continue to work on that. Right now, as part of that project, we were going to get some tablets for installation on the buses. We have those in place. We're working with IT to program them with the apps. And we also testing out or going to test out mounting equipment to be able to mount the tablets on the buses. So that is just a snapshot of some of the projects that we're working on. And I also provided a quick update on the various transit grants that we use in terms of ongoing work activities with the Federal Transit Administration as well as NCDOT in terms of what's going on, as well as the MPO. Last but not the least, we also continue to work on the maintenance garage feasibility study. The timeline has been extended a little bit, so we anticipate hopefully completing that study by March of this year. And so we will continue to provide updates as well. And then I'm sure some of you may have participated in the regional transit feasibility study in terms of the virtual meeting that took place. But I just wanted to let you guys know that the consultant firm working on the project or the study have been talking to other transit systems in the nation, one in Texas and one also in North Carolina. And they plan on talking to other systems in the state as well and in Seattle area. And so the next report will provide updates to that. And then the last study is Biltmore Avenue McDowell Street Corridor Study. And that also continues. And we had a meeting actually today, so I will provide updates to TC members in the next update. And that's basically is my report. Are there any questions, any need for additional information? Great, thank you.
Thank you, Eunice, for a super thorough report. I don't know how y'all are doing. Well, so it looks like Marcella's here. Marcella, our understanding is you were going to do the presentation on potential service changes. So if you're ready for that, I think we are.
Okay. All right. Cool. Hi, everyone. Let me pull up this presentation. Okay. So this presentation is a little bit of potential service changes, but also a look back at the improvements that has been made from from 2019 to 2020. So we can really see the difference now that the January 2020 service change made on the Asheville Rides transit system. So as you all mostly know, and actually everyone probably knows, I hope, after all of that marketing, that we implemented a service change on January 5th to improve the on-time performance of the system and as well improve frequency on key corridors. And this service change resulted in some pretty incredible on-time performance improvements, averaging to about 70% for all routes. I know previously we were looking at having a service change in August 2020, but COVID happened, so that changed our plans quite a bit. So to continue improving ART's level of service, it's possible that changing the schedules could be looked at in the future as a lower cost way of improving on-time performance without incurring additional service charges, since that's really what's expensive. So the methodology, Swiftly's on-time performance tools are really powerful for this. So back when I first started in 2018, the city was piloting Swiftly, and now we've had about 2 whole years with them. And this allows us to look back at our on-time performance information. And then recently, we invested in the runtimes module, which essentially allows the Swiftly platform to use all of our data collected over the past year and provide suggestions on what our schedule can be. So what I did based on our contracted goal with RATP Dev is recommended that routes that are still experiencing less than 72% on-time performance are recommended to be reviewed. And as Eunice mentioned earlier, I'm with the city in a part-time capacity, so I'm helping develop these schedules so that when there is stacking capacity, we can look at changing the schedule. So that's what this presentation is about. So routes with satisfactory on-time performance. Route N3 is the first one. So as you can see here, in 2019, we were looking at about 69% on-time performance, and that's improved to 82%, which is incredible. And I don't know, making all of these pie charts definitely felt nice to see that all of the changes recommended in that first year of the Transit Master Plan made a huge difference. I think the biggest takeaway is that early departures are a continuing issue, but the great thing about early departures is that those are a lot easier to control than late. So Route N4 was experiencing about 68% on-time performance and is now soaring at 78%. Route N5, and also to be fair, this comparison, Route N was broken out into Route N4 and N5. So it's a conglomeration of the 2 routes. So Route N5 was experiencing 68% on-time performance and now is at 81%. And we see that trend of the earlies increasing just slightly more. Route W1 was late almost half of the time, and now we're seeing it thriving at 79%. Route W5 was at 67% and is now sitting right at 72%. And then Route W6. This is a new route, so it doesn't have a comparison to last year. But one of the goals of implementing Route W6 was to have a dedicated route to serve Piscataway apartments to improve the on-time performance for Route W1 and Route W2. And that definitely was the case for W1. Route S4 was sitting at 67% and is now at 74%. And actually, I want to point out that, oh, can I go back? There we go. That the lates are at 25%, which is still a pretty significant amount, but hold on to that fact later in the presentation when we start talking about the service change. Route S5 was at 63% and is now sitting at about 73. Route S6, it was at 65 and now is sitting at around 74%. And this leads to the routes recommended for review. So all of these routes are sitting under 72%, which is what we have in the contract as our goal with RITP depth. So Route N1 saw a small improvement from 70% to 71, but is just under that threshold. Route N2 is at 65% and saw a slight improvement to about 68%. Route WE1, which is a combination of the former routes W4 and E1, is sitting at 68%. But when you look back at 2019, Route W4 was at 69%, and then Route E1 was at 54%. Route WE2 is sitting at about 70%, and then it's the former Route W3 and E2, which was not doing so hot. Route W3 was at 47% on-time performance, and E2 was at 62, so that is also quite an improvement after interlining those two routes. Route W2 saw an improvement from 55% on time to 70%. S1 is at 66%, was at 66, and now is at 67. So again, another slight improvement. We see that a lot of those late departures turned into earlies. Again, great news that earlies can be controlled a lot easier than late. As we all know, Asheville traffic can be. Route S2 was the only route that actually performed a little bit worse, quite a bit worse, from 71% to 58%. And this is because of early departures. And I think this is something that this schedule enhancement can definitely control, since the Tunnel Road corridor can be quite unpredictable, but once you get to Kenilworth, things start to settle out just a bit. Route S3 was at 61% in 2019, is now sitting at about 68%. And then Route 170 was at 60 and now is at 66%. And the things that changed with these routes, for example, Route 170 used to not serve Hawk Creek and now it does. So I think having an entire year's worth of data with the actual route alignment changes will allow city staff to make decisions on how to tweak these time points and fine tune them into the future, and be able to make sure that the schedules are working. So, like I mentioned earlier, I've been using Swiftly's runtimes module to use their data analysis tools to enhance the schedules and really look at what pain points we're hitting along the route and how we can add time or take time away to ensure that we're getting the maximum amount of on-time time points. So the first route that I looked at is Route W2. So this first row is the current timetable, and the second is what Swiftly suggests. And if you take a look at it, it's cutting some time from the outbound trip to the Asheville outlets, but then adding time once we return. Wait, sorry, backwards. It's adding time going out to the outlets as traffic on Brevard Road can be a little wild, and then cutting some time on the way back. So from this analysis, what I'm suggesting is that the time point at Brevard Road and Haywood Road be removed because it's really close to Haywood Road at Louisiana Avenue, and then adding additional time to layover at the Asheville outlets because it's a safe place for the bus to wait. And it would allow for that variability in traffic at Brevard Road. As we all know, the outlets are a big destination for jobs and as well for shopping and folks going out to the Blue Ridge Parkway. So certain times of the year we can see increased traffic, and this will help operators be able to adhere to the schedule without feeling rushed going to their next time point, but also not leaving so much time that, you know, some of the complaints that I remember seeing in the log is, you know, this bus is sitting at this layover spot for 20 minutes. So if we can get rid of some of that layover time, that's also good. More time on the road picking up passengers. So the other thing that I looked at was cleaning up time points. So one major bus stop on Haywood Road is the Ingalls at Louisiana Avenue. And these times, 6:11, 6:39, 6:28, they're kind of weird. They're kind of hard to remember. So what I'm doing as well is looking at the ability to clean up these time points. And this is just for an enhanced rider experience. It's a lot easier to remember that the bus comes 10 after, it comes 40 after, and it comes at the half hour than it is to remember 11, 44, and 53. So another example that I looked at was the N1 and N2. So when we were running these schedules back in January, not in January, in the summer of 2019, we were running the schedules on peak traffic hours, which is great to make sure that we have enough time on these routes, but not great in the sense that we have a lot of earlies because we're planning for the worst case scenario. So what Swiftly allows us to do is to see individual time points that are too loose. So for this example with the N1, we had originally scheduled the bus to arrive at Merriman Avenue at Hillside Street at 6:09, but in reality, the bus leaves early from that time point because there's not a place for it to lay down, and it gets there within 5 minutes. So Swiftly's suggestion is to cut 4 minutes off of that, and we'll see an improved on-time performance. Another suggestion that they had is that buses were arriving later than expected at Elkwood at Merriman. So adding layover time, because buses were arriving later in the day, or as buses were arriving later in the day and traffic got worse, they would get later and later in their on-time performance. So another thing that was interesting about Route N1 is that Swiftly at the end suggested that the bus should arrive at the art station at 6:50 or 10:50 on the hour, 10 before. It leaves a 10-minute layover time. And if you recall earlier, the S4 was running late about 25% of the time, and N1, N2, and S4 are all interlined. So this tool gives us the opportunity to revisit those interline routes and whether we can give time from Route N1 to S4 to make sure that it's on time. So this is an example of what Swiftly's dashboard looks like. I know you guys see the monthly on-time performance reports for the entire system and the routes, but we can actually get into a pretty granular level of data. So this is what I was talking about at Merriman at Hillside. The bus is arriving 49.1% of the time early. And this bus stop here, Merriman at Stratford Road, is late 60.5% of time. So adding that time later in the timetable would help accommodate that and improve our overall performance. So Route N2, it's more of the same. And I think what I wanted to make the point of here is that the bus typically gets back 19 minutes after the hour, and that leaves about 11 minutes of layover time. Then again, making that argument that Route N1 and Route N2 have about 10 minutes where they're sitting at the station, and maybe 5 minutes of that time can be transferred over to the S4 to stop that that 25% late time point arrival. And what I was saying earlier about cleaning up time points, I think John Rideau brought up that the UNCA students were having a hard time remembering when the bus came because there were awkward times like 13 after and 38 after. So this is another place where we can add a couple of minutes and create these even timetables where you know that if you want to go to North Asheville from UNCA, the bus will arrive 15 after and then 45 after. So other points of interest to clean up, I was thinking the tunnel road at Ingalls, since it serves 4 routes, US 70 at the VRQ, Bleachery Boulevard at Walmart, and McDowell Street at Lodge Street, just due to the fact that these are high ridership stops and also transfer points. So it would create a better experience for people, and I personally agree that it is a lot easier to remember. So this is a summary of the routes that are recommended to monitor for a future service change. And it shows whether they're mostly early or mostly late. And we went over all of these routes. But as a refresher, Route N1, N2, WE1, WE2, W2, S1, S2, S3, and 170 are recommended for revision in the future. So a little bit of a repeater too is the draft schedules can be created with the Swiftly runtime modules the city has invested in, and the rider feedback on the TMP changes should be taken into account, including balancing those arrival times so buses aren't bunched closely together, having time points that are major transfer points and high ridership stops be a little bit easier to remember when there's multiple buses serving the same stop. And also, runtimes provides an opportunity to explore realigning routes or having time divided up different routes to improve on-time performance. And I think that was my last slide. It was.
Can I jump in?
Sure. Yeah, I would just say we only have about 8 minutes left by my clock. So
yeah, one comment, one question. First of all, yes, the January 5th changes have been confirmed by riders that they've really improved things. I'm incredibly impressed with this presentation. I'm wondering, given if you have all of the data, could you actually run the new time points on last year's data and actually tell what, if we had run the new time points, what the earlies and lates would look like? I don't know if you have that level of control of your data.
I'm not sure, because I think what this program does is it takes our GTFS, which is the Google Transit Speed specification. So all of the coding that goes to Google and to all of the apps that we use, and it records what the time points were. So in 2019, we had a lot more time points than we do in 2020. So we have to ask Swiftly, I think, if they can look at that comparison.
Okay, thank you.
anyone else? For me, that was amazing. Thank you, Marcella. Please come back.
Thank you. Great job. We're going to miss you.
Please come back.
I'll be in town. I'll see you guys around town or at the transfer station. Although I've been trying not to ride because of the passenger limit, but I'll be around until July. So always reach out.
I think the only thing we haven't gotten to is the operations updates. maybe, there's a lot of reports in there, but since we only have a couple minutes, if folks have specific questions or concerns, I know, Jeff, I think you mentioned you had something, but maybe we can just jump right to that.
Yeah, I'm gonna skip the one about 170, and I'm gonna work to a different one. I noticed that in December, two concerns were called in to customer service about buses speeding through Kenilworth. I have a question for Barry. Barry, can Swiftly tell us? And both were inconclusive in the customer complaint section. They couldn't conclude whether or not the bus was running too fast or not. And it occurred to me that Swiftly might be able to tell us very easily, because normally the speed limit is readily available. There could even be a feedback to a driver if you are going over the speed limit, or it could be reported. And I know that you have reports that generate that tell you if drivers could do certain types of behaviors that they shouldn't be doing, and that could include speeding. So could that the report that the Kenilworth bus was speeding, could that simply be determined electronically rather than, we don't have any conclusion based on trying to look at videos and things?
If we have accurate data, for instance, I think the issues with those, and LaShawn can say yay or nay, I think both of those, the time frames were not, the time frames or our ability to try and nail down the time frames we couldn't find where that bus was speeding. Okay.
Right.
Because yes, we can look at the speed of the bus. Absolutely.
But my question is, you can do this independent of time frame. If you get a report that you should just get a report automatically, I think, if it says, hey, the Kenilworth bus was 10 miles over the speed limit on Thursday at 3:35. That report could be generated automatically, but maybe it's not. Maybe that's too much going in.
No, it is much, but we can absolutely pull that video and get that information, or pull it out of Swift and get that information on speed of the bus. Absolutely. And on both of these instances, the reported times, the bus was not speeding. So I don't know if it was a situation of it really, hey, listen, a bus going 25 miles per hour on Kenilworth looks like a bus going really fast if you're standing next to that road. So I don't know if that's the illusion that it is, honestly, but the buses that were reported were not in a speeding mode.
Okay, I missed that when I read the concluding remarks. I thought it was more speculative, and it basically said, I think, well, we'll send out an announcement not to speed to the drivers who drive on that route. But I didn't realize you had actually concluded there was no speeding.
Well,
Yes,
that's what I
we
thought.
did.
Isn't that the case, LaShawn?
We did. We concluded that it was no buses speeding, but
Okay.
because we get that not only in Kenilworth, we get it in Shiloh on White Avenue, especially. We have in the past that the bus is speeding up and down White Avenue, but when we run the playback, the sound of the engine sounds like the bus is going fast, but they're not going fast.
Okay.
So I did want to make sure that the operators are cautious of their speed, although in Kenilworth with the traffic control, there is no way that the bus can speed through.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have any final questions, comments, concerns, or just open it up?
Yeah, I did, Thomas Harvey.
Go ahead.
I never got an answer back on the bus passes for the year. Maybe staff can answer that question today.
I am waiting on the list of the number that I need to give out. So I think that's what we're waiting on.
Okay, that's all good, LaShawn. Where are the passes going to be? Are you going to have them at the station? Or are you going to send them out or whatever?
I think last year we had some at the station and then some were sent up to City Hall. So I guess it will be whatever decision is made where we're going to keep them.
Okay, because see, I was wondering because it's getting closer and closer time for me to get my vaccine. They're coming into my age group.
Right now, you'll be able to ride it for free.
After 11 months, I'm ready to get up out of here now.
It's still
Ready
free.
to get on the bus.
It's still
We've
free.
ordered all that we have. I'm just waiting on the list.
Okay, and then the next thing I want, I brought this up time and time again in 2019. So 2020, we've been in a lackadaisical state. But I was the only one back in July of 19 and August of 19 and August of 2019. We need to get back to where we need to be as far as advancing racial equality, equity, and it was on the agenda back in 2019, and we need to put it back on the agenda. So whenever we do get back together, advancing racial equity 101 and advancing racial equity 201 need to be put back on for people to get into the class. Because I took it at those both of the classes, they were phenomenal. And in light of all of the commotion that's been going on, and I call it rioting and demonstrations, we definitely need more education in that area.
Hey, Harvey, this is Amy. I just want to let you know that today was the deadline for the transit annual passes, and I submitted everyone's name that had asked to be on the list to get an annual pass. So after the list is submitted to RATP Dev, you should be receiving a pass.
Yeah, because you told me I didn't have to call you because I was the one instituted the question as far as getting receiving pass. I appreciate that very much, Amy. Mm-hmm. Yes, I appreciate that very much.
You're welcome.
And like I said, that's advancing racial equity. We definitely need that in our repertoire.
Thank you, Harvey.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments from anyone? We're a little over time.
Two quick things. Perhaps on the next meeting, maybe there could be an update on whether or not the transit committee could be a commission. I think that was going to be revisited by the new multimodal. I just don't know where that stands, but I know we advocated and requested that at some point in the past, and I don't know where that stands. The second thing is that I think, Thomas, with your departure from the transit committee, we now have 3 openings. So there may be an opportunity for some applicants, advertise for more people for the transit committee. Alyssa not there, Dana not there, and with Thomas's departure, we may have a need for 3. That's all for me.
Hey, Jeff, this is Eunice. Just wanted to mention on the second part of your comments that we're working on getting some applications out. We've received inquiries and interest to be part of the group. So just wanted to update everyone to let them know that we are working on that.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, I have the avenue real fast. My men's group, Black Men's Monday, is focused on feeding children over the weekend. So if you could think of any children in our areas that probably aren't being fed because they're not making it to school, please reach out to me and let me know. Thank you.
It's good.
All right, well, if there's nothing else, I think we could adjourn at 5:34, unless anyone else has anything.
Thank you so much, y'all.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, staff.
Thank you all. Good to see you and stay safe.
Glad to see everybody.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Great meeting, Thomas. Awesome. Thanks to our new
Yeah.
leader.
Hey, and Thomas, will you